Good morning. My name is John Driesen. I am the late speaker today. I thank Carly. She gave us a rather big word, a lugubrious intro. A little kind of sad sound there, but I'll try to step it up if I can. And we welcome, by the way, all of those of you on Zoom as well. We don't know how many are out there, but I hope we have many, and this will be hopefully informative and will provoke you to offer feedback by way of Zoom if you are so inclined. I was going to begin channeling Robin Williams. Good morning, UUFP, Vietnam, for those who remember that lovely movie. Welcome to the UUFP. We are the successors of two faiths, the Unitarians, who would date back a long time, but basically believed in one higher power, not a trinity, and the Universalist faith, who believed that there was no hell, that a loving God, even a Christian God, could not confine people to a place of interminable pain and sorrow. And we are their successors. Also, we have a primary belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Therefore, we welcome you to be here, either in person or on Zoom, regardless of your prior religious beliefs, cultural background, sexual orientation, color of your skin, or anything else. We have no impediments to being part of our fellowship. So first and foremost, do we have any announcements today for the good of the fellowship?
Now that I think of it, this might be too late. I think this is the last Sunday of the month, but just in case you're driving by and you haven't done so yet, you are welcome and invited to drop new bottles of bleach or surface cleaners that have bleach in them into our donation basket in the foyer. Those go to the cluster, the Pottstown cluster of area churches, which supports people who are having a hard time with housing and with food. So I'll be going at the end of the week with whatever donations we have, probably on Friday, over to drop them off. So feel free to bring those. And look in the newsletter each month for the list of things that month that we'll be donating. So thank you.
Okay, as Alan can help us with chalice lighting, which is our symbol, our flame, if you will. As with so many religions, flame signifies energy and life. Number 447. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude to those who have lighted the flame within us. I'm going to ring the chime. That hopefully, there we go. It was in closer right all over it. So let us come to a place of peace and silence. We keep our phones in a silent mode, pages likewise. Our opening words are from the hymnal 431. O spinner, weaver of our lives, your loom is love. May we who are gathered here be empowered by that love to weave new patterns of truth and justice into a web of life that is strong, beautiful, and everlasting. I chose my hymns today rather randomly based upon things that struck me as enjoyable. So the first hymn is number 101, Abide With Me, Love Me All With Him, And please stand as you're willing and able as we sing the hymn. Okay, I really hadn't prepared a time for all ages, so I will pass that by. I don't see Ruby, I don't see kids, so I think we will just move on and we will not be singing the children to class. But the next phase is an important phase. We are, of course, self-supporting through our contributions, through the basket, through our pledges, rental of the facility. So it is now time to make the money collection. Whatever you have, whatever you can provide will be appreciated greatly. Thank you for what you've provided for our financial sustenance going forward. I have a reading, which is number 664 in the hymnal, which is a reading by myself only. You can all rest easy. No, I take it back. It is. This is the problem with taking things out a week in advance. This is a responsive reading, so you do get to help me out here. So 664 in the gray hymnal, and we can do this responsively. Give us the spirit of the child. Give us the spirit of the child. Give us a child who lives within.
The child who trusts, the child who imagines.
The child who receives without reservation, the child who gives without judgment.
Give us a child's eyes, that we may see the beauty and presence of his day.
Give us a child's ears, that we may hear the music of mythical times.
That we may fill with wonder and delight.
Give us a child's faith, that we may be cured of our cynicism.
Give us the spirit of a child, who is not afraid to be, who is not afraid to love.
Okay, so on to my sermon. I was driving in my car one day, a couple weeks ago, and I said to myself, so, Unitarian Universalists believe in the concept of prayer. After all, we are mostly secular humanists who believe in the power of their own, and we believe we determine the orientation of our direction of our own faith. And if one is to pray, who or what is listening to the prayer? How do we have any knowledge of that fact? We don't. And it occurred to me that meditation plays a role in religious observation or in religious thinking as it does in Buddhism, among other faiths. So as I go through this, I'm going to ask everybody to think about their own beliefs about prayer and meditation. I've left time, which may be copious after my sermon, which is not to be gory and long, to offer their thoughts from their faith traditions of their past about that. I have put some trappings of my Judaic background, which I'll discuss shortly, kippah, bag for the tallis, and my father's father tefillin. Mine are someplace I can't find them. And we'll talk about the role of objects such as they pertain to worship. Are they important either? And I have my stuff is in small font. I wasn't smart enough to double space and use big font, so you'll find me at times searching among my notes. And to me, a sermon is a moving creature. And so even though I write things down, I tend to freelance because the thoughts never stop about how to process what we're talking about. So the first comment, and I actually, this came from Cynthia Buell, who you may remember fondly and gets in touch with me on Facebook. But there was a comment that she put out there about prayer. So if you think about prayer and where prayer began a long time ago. It began in primitive times when our distant ancestors knew nothing about the natural world. They lived in constant fear of things that we understand, instances of volcanoes, thunder, lightning, rain, lack of rain, being terrorized by animals, dying from disease or infection. And so at some point, they logically concocted the concept of hopefully some higher power to whom they could pray and hope for some respite from their travails. And if you go back, prayer goes back a very, very long time. It predates what we would call modern religions. It probably predates the Druids. I think every culture has had some beliefs, whether they were bizarre, terrorizing, such as the Aztecs. There was always a concept of religion, whether it was control of the society, or whether because people were hopeless and they needed to hope that there was someone or something out there who could make sense, making sense of their environment. But if you think about prayer that we utter today, if you go back to the religions of your origin, how old are those prayers? And where do they come from? You know, where do the prayers of the Bible come from? New or Old Testament? They came from prior prayers that were from other faith traditions that predated the so-called major religions of the present time. And so here we are, if we are following a traditional faith tradition in 2022, uttering prayers that are somewhat fossilized. Certainly I know from my Jewish faith that many of the prayers go way back and actually come from the Torah, which goes back many thousands of years at a time when the cultures were different, the people were different, the understanding of our natural world was different, and yet we still utter those prayers. We go back to the early days of Christianity, and some prayers have come down through the ages. It's odd, I did some research, the Torah itself does not really speak to prayer. You know, the Talmud and the Mishnah and the Gemara, the Talmud, the expositions that came down through thousands of years from sage rabbis may address it. But those are secondary sources, and the actual 5 books of Moses does not really, from what I understand, dictate prayer or how we should pray. we should be thankful, but the actual liturgy of prayer is not actually determined. And even as I'll talk about, Jesus did not really codify prayer. That came later with the development of Christian religions, which themselves have different versions of prayer as we go along. And of course, if everyone's prayer is different to some higher power, which ones are the valid prayers? How do we make any sense of that? So just think about that. Now, we as Unitarian Universalists are secular, and we don't really have any prayers. We utter things, but we're not really beseeching a higher power that I know of in the hope that it will bail us out and solve our problems. So, I've written many things along here. So the concept of prayer is a vast topic. It's one of these things I jump into and then realize like I'm skimming the surface and I'm never going to do much more than a superficial introduction to the concept. And I would ask anyone who's interested to keep on researching the concept of prayer if you can. And my goal here is just to provoke us, all of you, to think about prayer as it fits in or does not fit into your life and to comment about that fact. So I've learned a great deal about how to hopefully do a good sermon from listening to Emily, who does the job so very well. And so I'm going to start as she often starts, which is a definition, some definitions of prayer from the Oxford Dictionary of the English Language. So the dictionary gives me several definitions to go with. One, words that speak to a God, giving thanks or asking for help. The second is a fixed form of words that you can say when you speak to God. Now, to comment about that, should prayer be individual? Does prayer carry the same meaning if we are using someone else's time-honored words, and they're not really our words, we're just doing it because we do it? Speaking from a Jewish faith, I uttered many prayers over many years, which were in the prayer book for things that I was just doing by rote. They had no specific meaning to me at the time. I just did it because I did it. I stood when I should say certain prayers, I sat when I said other prayers, but the prayers were kind of pre-written. And the question is, what was that all about? Was I really accomplishing anything more than following a script? You can kind of ponder on that. The concept of prayer comes from the Latin word precaria, which is interesting. It says to petition or to beg. I'm not sure that we're beggars when we pray, but that doesn't speak well about that. So ponder on that as well. And if you pray, are you begging? What are you looking for when you pray? What is it going to do for you? So moving on, I was curious how different religions conceptualize prayer, because every religion has a different idea as to what prayer means to it. So I looked at Catholic, and this would not surprise you, and there's more esoteric definitions, I'm sure. But what I found is, not surprisingly, the Catechism defines prayer as a vital and personal relationship with the living and true God. Obviously, the true God being the Catholic version of God, but that was what they say. It goes beyond that, and saying Jesus said that a prayer should be a private time between God and the worshiper. That's kind of more benign, because he does not define God, and I think that is true. Prayer is a very individual, personal matter. And if you pray in that way, we are doing something that makes more sense to me. The Jewish definition of prayer was actually a bit more difficult to pin down. But what I got from that is the implication is it's an understanding that prayer is not only a request making cession, but it's communal bonding between God and his child. And a great many of my definitions make that comment, looking at us as children, looking to a father, if you will, as we might seeking something, as we might from our own parents over the course of time. And if you go on further than that, it says that some of these words mean to fall down to the ground in the presence of an authority to plead a cause. So think of that one as well. And again, it says basically, if we go to the non-Catholic concept, it's a Christian's way of communicating with God. And it's thought to be, you're talking to God and, just trying to have a dialogue, if you will. Now, if we go away from the Bible, we go to, let's see, Islam. As you know, in Islam, prayer is the second of the five pillars of the faith. So you can't be an observant Muslim unless you pray 5 times a day. And, you know, again, it's a stipulation of that faith. You can't be observant unless you face Mecca, you stand, kneel, bow, and do your prayer duty 5 times a day. The concept there is that the act of offering a prayer is felt to be an act of supplication and purification. I tried to look further into the concept of prayer in Islam, but it is so intrinsic to the faith that I kind of got bogged down because there was more and more layers in the Quran and literature as to what it means to be a prayerful Muslim. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that. Just to realize that, though, probably more than many other faiths, to them that is intrinsic. You've got to pray 5 times a day to be doing the right thing. And there are many religions in the world, and I can't go through all of them, but you know that's just a smattering. Now, back to Judaism, I can go back to my history on that one. So an observant Jew is supposed to pray 3 times a day, if you're, I assume, Orthodox. But then you get into the conundrum, like with all religions, what if you're conservative? What if you're Reformed? What if you're Reconstructionist? And there are other versions of Judaism that have emerged. You know, where is the marker set? In theory, many Jews go to temple every morning, are part of the minyan of the required number of individuals who have bar bat mitzvah, women now being included, to offer the morning prayers. In addition, Torah readings take place on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And so in theory, you should also be attending some of those sessions because it's not really sufficient if you're observant to only come on a Saturday to, you know, be exposed to the Word of God as written in the Torah scrolls. But again, if one does not do that, you know, where does that place you? Well, if you're not Orthodox, probably you're fine. And so we get into the whole concept of what does prayer mean in terms of your degree of religiosity and adherence to the fine points of your faith. Let's see, I've written little notes for myself here as I go along. See if an illustration here. The other thing, I guess, is in prayer, someone determines for you whether you should be standing, sitting, or kneeling. You know, where does that come from? I know in Judaism, there are certain prayers which, because of their perceived holiness, like the Amidah and the Shema, where you should be standing, because those prayers are the holier prayers. It's thought that you're a little closer to God, and to be observant, you must stand to show your faith. Or, I guess, in the case of Islam, in some cases, you're bowing to God, putting your head on the ground, groveling in a sense, not to say it negatively, but you're kind of in that position to do that. I remember distinctly in Judaism, there was only one time where the rabbi would be on the ground, and during the Yom Kippur service, the rabbi is taking it upon himself to pray for the congregation for forgiveness that he be written into the book of life and not the book of death for the year. And there's this prayer he does standing in front of the ark, and usually people helping him because the rabbi is a bit older. And first he kneels, and then he basically ends up, I believe it's been a long time, laying flat and uttering the last part of the prayer he is saying in complete abject humbleness to do that. So again, this is just another element of prayer that has been dictated over the course of time. This is a conservative temple. I've never been to a Yom Kippur service in a Reformed temple. Don't know if they have the need to do that, and I don't know about the Orthodox faith as well. So again, if you're doing prayer, what about your position? Does that make a difference in your adherence and holiness, and whether your prayer is truly heard or accepted by what you believe is your divine higher power from whom you may have forgiveness and sustenance? And again, in Judaism, you know, there are prayers for everything. There are prayers before your meal. There are prayers after your meal. There are prayers for good harvest. There are prayers for, it goes on and on. There are endless prayers that, again, date back many, many years, again, which may or may not have consequences today, but are simply things that one does. Now, you know, the other thing is, and I'll talk about different kinds of prayer, but I don't know that any of those prayers ever had an impact on me, which is sort of why I'm not in the faith. because I knew them by rote. I could still go to a Jewish service and say those prayers very effectively, but I still don't know what I'm saying because most of them are in Hebrew, and I don't really know where the payoff is, if you will. So just my spontaneous thoughts about that. But again, it seems that, again, your supplicant in an active faith is petitioning or conversing with a higher power. Ponder on that, and I'm going to go on to different kinds of prayer. And this is just a laundry list because there is not one kind of prayer. There's different kinds of prayers, and the list of few I won't do it in one breath. But here we go. Brief list. Here we go. Intercession, rosary, supplication, confession, continual, petition, thanksgiving, spiritual welfare, praise, salvation, pardon, promise, submission, blessing, contemplation, forgiveness. I may repeat myself someplace here, but meditation, discernment, reflection, adoration, lament, deliverance, contrition, guidance, for Judaism, blessings over the Torah, petitioning, obligatory, required, voluntary, and I kind of ran out of steam at that point as I was trying to find different types of prayer. So again, how do we define prayer? What kind of prayer? Makes my head spin a little bit. And I just scratched the surface of the hodgepodge of these many things. I guess, remembering back to what I did about wisdom from the Fiddler on the Roof, we remember Tevye, and I believe, if I recall, he talked to the rabbi because there's a prayer for everything, and there's a famous one, with a prayer for the czar, and he says, keep him far away. So I think that's kind of what's happening in Russia, by the way, with regard to the new czar. Except the comment. Okay. And the other comment is, as Unitarian Universalists, prayer, in some ways, you're kind of psychophants. You're kind of doing this because you're taught to do it. We don't tend to, it's universal in many types of religions, but again, as you use as secular humanists, we don't necessarily believe that we do that to be holy or to live a full and complete life, I would think. And there are various shades of Unitarian Universalism, some are more from Christianity to this day, but I think in the mainstream, we kind of hold to that belief. The other thing is, and I brought some trappings in my past. So if one is to pray successfully, must someone be wearing something sacred? I brought my tallis, the tefillin, the tallis is back here with the Hebrew inscription. Tallis, the tefillin, which are the phylacteries you wear on your head and your arm for certain morning services. So the question is, if I were Jewish in that faith, I was not wearing those things, would my prayer be acceptable? How important is that? Now I was brought up to believe if you didn't do those things and didn't wear those things, at some level, you were somewhat deficient. And I'm sure I'm not as familiar with other faith traditions in Christianity. I'm sure there are talismans as well that people have. People wear crosses, people wear all manner of icons. And the question is, so again, are these things empowering your prayer? Just you can ponder on that one. So meditation. Now there are various definitions, and back to the Oxford Dictionary. It says this is the practice of focusing one's mind in silence, especially for religious reasons or in order to make your mind calm. And I think that Randy, as I say all these things, because she's probably more the guru on this than me, but other definitions are to engage in contemplation or reflection. In yoga and meditation is a religious practice of concentration on a mantra exclusively to bring about the one-pointedness of the mind. For the Buddhist, meditation is a mental and physical course of action at a personal level to separate themselves from the thoughts and feelings in order to become fully aware. So successful meditation can be defined as not judging, not thinking, simply being aware, at peace, and living in the moment as it unfolds. And there are many more commentaries about meditation. I just wanted to throw that out there and make that comment. And Eastern faiths, of course, as we know, are much more, have found meditation to be much more their means of worship than more noisy approach, perhaps, in many of the Western religions in comparison. And one comment I would make For any who are aware of 12-step recovery programs as exemplified by AA, step 11 says that the individual asks that in prayer meditation, they should improve their conscious contact with God. And further readings from Bill Wilson, who was one of the two founders, goes on to say that he looks at them as flip sides, neither one being sufficient, but both of which is a duality, help build the essential spirituality, which energizes the person in their recovery. So that's just another view of, I don't think it's A or B, and the 12-step programs say that they both play essential roles in what is recovery without a definition of who or what God is, but that meditation is helpful to calm the restless mind. So, you may ask me, and both of these, by the way, speak differently. Now, I have a comment here that they both speak differently. And again, the ultimate goal, at least in the 12-step program, and for people in general, is spiritual growth, which in many ways is what we're looking for, the peace that comes from whatever spirituality can be defined as. So, as a Unitarian Universalist, we offer, I made comment that we don't offer prayers in a heartfelt sense or waiting for something in return. Not in a program fashion, not on a daily basis. We leave each person to make a decision based upon their own search for their own spirituality, their own pathway. As we say here, that we want people to have a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and that's really part of our search. And we believe that it's ongoing. It never stops. We keep on searching because you don't know when you're there. So once again, I would say, if someone does pray, to whom you're praying, do you have any guarantee or knowledge that someone heard you and that something will come back to you because of that? Hard to say. It truly is an article of faith when one prays. So you may say to me, hey, you talked about all this stuff as if you don't do this. It makes no sense to you. But there is a caveat. Karl Marx once said, allegedly, that religion was the opiate of the masses. He believed that religion was to control people. And, that's not what his vision was of communism. Well, from my point of view, when I feel distressed or sad, I will pray in my own way. I'm not sure who I'm praying to, but I will offer my own concocted version of prayer, whether anyone is hearing me or not. And my comment is, and maybe for many of us, the bottom line is the action of prayer, in whatever form I do it, is comforting to me at times of need, and as a UU, that is sufficient. Those are the benefit accrues to me. I don't really care if anyone's listening to me. I feel better for the fact that I've prayed. My sense of distress, fear, angst, whatever it is, tends to decrease. So whatever I'm doing seems to have a benefit where it's most important, and that's for me. And so my comment is, the bottom line, the action of prayer is, in whatever form for me, is comforting at times of need, and that's sufficient. Perhaps it's sufficient for me to feel that my God, my higher power, speaks in the silence of my heart. And perhaps, in the bottom line, maybe that is for me and for other individuals, in whatever religion and form that they pray, is the bottom line. So, with that being said, I now would invite anybody to comment, since we're recording this and since people at home can't hear us unless you would use a microphone. I would ask if you wish to make such comment. I invited somebody to say something, not too bad, but you have any thoughts about what I've said, about your own thoughts about prayer and meditation, I would invite you to come up and come to the mic and say what's on your soul and your heart.
Say something. Yeah. My name's Sue. I think we've probably had this discussion so many times. I don't know if I've ever shared some of my things, but like what you were saying, I specifically found like my answer to when you said children seeking an answer from God, like children seeking an answer from God, when you were speaking of a prayer. Like that hit something in me because I guess I've been going to therapy lately. And I wrote that when you're praying, in essence, the answers that you receive, even if you're saying them to someone else, come from yourself. Because if you're in therapy for long enough, eventually they'll lead you down a path where you answer your own questions. They won't give you answers. So I wrote, it's that answering your own question is coming from inside of you. And I think that that is the Holy Spirit, and the great spirit within is what connects us as humans and makes us different than just like a piece of dirt or something, is that we can answer ourselves, like existence. I don't know. So also that the collectiveness of finding the common goal, where many different prayers of many different people and religions meet, like where they find the commonness is like a force of magic in the universe to manifest, like to alter energy around us, like the power of music when different elements are brought together, how moving that can be. And as far as objects, I think they are just to focus your energy in on, and that if there were already beliefs within that object passed to you, I think that's something I lack and I wish I had. But I think that's extra fueling of the energy. They're just some of my thoughts.
I'm gonna make one quick editorial comment to let more speakers come, but one of the things I discovered also that between the distinction of prayer and meditation, that I thought that escaped me, prayer is more of us taking an action, talking from ourselves outward. Many definitions of meditation are kind of like being quiet and simply listening. So prayer can be buzzing around your head, which may preclude you from hearing from the great beyond, from whatever you're trying to listen to. Whereas meditation is more, as I said here, you quiet your mind, you turn on your receiver, and you simply listen to the input.
Thanks, Sue, for going first. For me, I don't really believe that when I'm talking to God that He's going to be, oh, there's a sick child. Let me heal the sick child. Like I don't really believe there's a direct correlation, but I do feel that prayer is important because it's a clarification of thoughts. It's kind of what I wrote down here. It's you can say help, things are wrong, or even prayer can also be being thankful or have gratitude for something, but it helps you clarify, okay, what's wrong, what do I need to help with to fix this situation? I need strength in a particular way to help with the situation that I'm praying about, or if I'm thankful for nature, beautiful sunset, what exactly it is that I'm thankful for. I think it helps with clarification and focusing it's a quiet time to figure this stuff out. And the other thing I wanted to say was I agree with Sue. I like to think that sitting and praying and having good, positive energy. I like to think that the collective positive energy helps us all. I don't know whether it does, but that's what I like to think.
I learned about prayer from an Orthodox Jew who served in the British Army in World War II and served in a Highland regiment. When the regiment lined up for parade, he wore kilts with all the rest of them. And in the years after, he found hanging out with our gang at partying Scots at the Renaissance Fair. It was great fun. And he camped out with the rest of us at the fair site. And in the morning, we would see him out and about, all kitted out with all the accoutrements of an Orthodox Jew. John knows what I mean. But silent. You might see his lips moving, but he was silent. It was as if he were holding a conversation with God, not nothing of the sort of not raving, not demanding things of his of our far spirit, just a conversation. And I recall one morning, Evelyn and I were out early, and we encountered him as he was strolling around, and he gave us a big smile, and he said, "I'm paying my rent." Well, I had to explain to everyone what all that, all the stuff he was carrying or he was wearing was, and she'd never seen anything of the sort. But yeah, I learned from Levine that you don't have to shout. You don't have to follow any particular formula. It doesn't require specific words. That when you are in conversation with the God of Abraham, who is worshipped by Jew, Christian, Muslim, and as far as Levine was concerned, every word was heard. Every word, every thought. And everything he had to say was recorded in the book of life. And that's where I learned what real prayer was and how it was done. This very humble man who had done things he had to do, and found our bunch of Scots to be good company. And when he came out in the morning, he was holding a conversation. He was having a conversation with God. Although we didn't always know and join him in it, no, he wasn't doing anything that most of us would do, but he was respected. We understood, and and to me, that was prayer. He was in conversation. And it was, as he walked around in the morning, he was a Jew talking to his God.
Sure. So yarmulke or kippah, depends whether you're going to use Yiddish or Hebrew. The belief in Orthodox Judaism is that one should always have one's head covered out of respect for God. So an Orthodox Jew will never be without a head covering unless he or she is asleep. I remember our rabbi who was conservative, but kind of had those beliefs. And I still remember him shifting from his fedora to kippah. Sometimes it was already there. If not, it was kind of like, never having his head uncovered in front of God. And many other religions, obviously, you have the Catholic religion with the beretta being the same way in certain parts of the faith, the cardinals and the bishops. So respect for God. The tallis or prayer shawl, and again, don't ask me to remember what the Hebrew says on the top, but it was a very stylized process that you would recite the prayer and you kiss the Jewish stars on either side. This would be worn for Sabbath and for various other services, not if you're Reform. And these things down here, they have they would be called fringes. In Hebrew, they're called the tzitzits. If you were to read from the Torah, you would never touch a Torah with your hand, but you would take the tip of the tallis. The reader who has I have actually one smaller around my neck called the yad finger, because you can't touch the scroll, it is holy and it's made of parchment. So the reader, when you came up to be at the Torah, would point to the spot where you're reading, you would take these, you would touch it, kiss it, and you've done your obligation to respect the Torah before you recite prayers and be there at the time of the Torah reading. And then, hold this up in a second. Again, I'd like to fill in or someplace I could not find these. I was told my father said came from his father. And let me see if I can undo these. I haven't used these for years, but there are two parts. These are a little scrambled up, a little bit old. In the phylacteries is a reading, and again, don't ask me what, but there's a reading in here. One of these would go around your head. It comes from Deuteronomy, for frontlets upon your eyes. And there's a second piece that talks about your arm. The second one would be wrapped around your arm, and you have to do 7 wraps from here down. Why 7 wraps? Again, unfortunately, my knowledge of the fine points of what we wear and why we wear Judaism have long since expired. But those are the basic meanings of these items that presumably energize. And again, remembering that the use of the tefillin, that does go directly from the Bible. And again, I'm not going to quote correctly, but they shall be as for frontlets between your eyes. And the second piece would refer to the arm. Left arm, I guess, being closer to your heart from the old traditions. And again, speaking a little cynically, it depends what level of Judaism you're in. If you're an Orthodox Jew, you wear covering your head at all times, and you can always tell an Orthodox Jew because they'll have some form of head covering. The women, as you know, by the way, never leave the house showing their own hair. They always have a wig because that is felt to be something only the husband gets to see. So if you ever meet an Orthodox Jewish woman or a wife, again, she's following the stipulations. What you see on her head is not going to be her own hair. Darn hot in the summer, I'm sure. If an Orthodox gentleman comes to a house, this was actually true. My mother was working on the the headstones for she and my father. The Orthodox Jewish fellow who was going to make the headstones came to the house, always keeping himself between the door and her, out of just a couple of random thoughts out of respect and following the stipulations of being in a house with another woman. But again, these are all traditions that vary between Orthodox Jews who follow the rules on the Bible, the laws rather scrupulously, and the Reform or conservative Jews who are less so. Reform Judaism, when I went to a Reform temple, I was very surprised because wearing kippah was optional. Talis was pretty much not worn by anybody, and their big service was Friday, not Saturday, which is the traditional seventh day for the Jewish faith. So again, the question is, if you ask in a prayer or in religion, who is doing it right? The Orthodox Jews intone many, many more prayers, which gives them a comfort level for their faith. The conservative Jews span from almost being Orthodox down to being almost conservative, but not quite. And again, they choose with their rabbi and their own, choice of religiosity. And Reform Judaism has somewhat different beliefs. The Reform Jews don't follow the kashrut. They don't follow the rules of, milk and meat, shrimp, cloven animals. They don't believe that has significance anymore in the bigger, more important facets of what makes what is the core of Judaism. And they have abandoned those because they believe that they're archaic. And so again, religion, you pick and choose, you change your prayers, you modernize, based upon a global decision from above. All right, so I'm not going to digress. Alan has some comments. I'm not going to digress into dissertations on the faith, although we'll come later.
I thought what Erica said was interesting. Prayer as a means to clarify your thoughts, particularly when you're in distress and how to proceed. Another thing about prayer, I'm also from the Jewish faith originally, and I remember I have Orthodox relatives, and they said one of the values of like filling and doing that ritual is that connects you with Jews who are Orthodox all over the world, and it connects you with Jews way back thousands of years in the distance past. And I think that's an interesting, it was meaningful to me, the sense of connection that he described. As for myself, I've never prayed. I take a different angle. I think of prayer mainly as asking for something from a higher power. And that perhaps gives one solace. My solace comes from not asking or thinking about I'll get anything from a higher power, but from accepting what nature is. And the thought that I have, especially with a physical problem, that I say to myself is, I don't have a say in the laws of nature. And so I just have to accept what the laws of nature bring.
Hi, I'm Judy, and I really appreciated having everybody else's thoughts here. This was nice. My experience with prayer is as a youngster, you accept what your parents, they take you to church, or synagogue, you learn all that stuff. And as I got older, I found that I had friends that were Catholics, and so I went to them and I actually was entranced. You could stand up, you could sit down, you could kneel. They said all these prayers. I realized I wasn't Catholic, so I didn't say them, but as I grew older, I realized that I really didn't like people putting words in my mouth. And that's what the standard rote prayers were. And I started coming, my parents moved here when I was 8, so they found the Unitarian Church down in Delaware. So I started going there, and I actually grew to not like anybody in my entire life putting words in my mouth. And so when I came here in the 90s and we have these readings, I would never, ever repeat those thought, the readings, maybe 10 years ago, I started to, but it's just to read something there, not my thoughts. But if I had to clarify my thoughts about prayers, for me, like Alan says, you're asking for something, but they have become so trite. They've become a lot of political stuff too. When we have gun violence, or we have hate crimes, or we have poverty, anything else, thoughts and prayers, and then people don't have to do anything because they said their prayer. And I rarely say, I can't remember as an adult, except, I guess I must be honest, when you see all these people on Facebook and something awful has happened, and what do they first write? Thoughts and prayers about this, that, or the other. And there I am clicking, saying thoughts and prayers. I don't ever use that little icon though. I just don't think that prayers, of all the things, all the problems that are going on in the world, my little problem here is trite compared to all that. I will admit that there are times when, like Erica, when you see a beautiful sunset and you see a new baby, I will say, I look up and I will say, Lord, thank you for letting me see this. It's not a prayer, but part of me for prayers is that it just is something rote that you don't have to think about, and I want to think about everything I say.
I'm glad everyone got energized and spoke. That I think is the heart of who we are, the people we think, we make thoughts. We offer this for everyone's benefit. I think I could sum it up and say that prayer or those thoughts help the inside of each of us and enlighten us and empower us and make us feel better. And I think what better purpose could prayer have? Okay, so moving onwards, this will be very simple. Please stay seated. This is easy. It's hymn 391. We're going to do it twice. It's a very short prayer or hymn, voice still and small. 391. I think we can definitely do this in the sitting position. Okay, so if Alan could be so kind as to extinguish the chalice. I'll be creative, but we will extinguish this flame, which has provided light both conceptually and in our minds, in our hearts and our souls. May we carry that light in our hearts and souls, in our inner being, until we meet again. I didn't have a benediction picked out here, but I'm just gonna flip here and find something that will make sense to me. So we'll pick 687, reign of choice. I think it's appropriate. Go your ways, knowing not the answer to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know. And Carly could play Spirit of Life before we leave. So go in peace, shalom, namaste, may the good in all of us meld together. And we will now move on in private to the sharing of joys and concerns.